In a world obsessed with rankings, two men dare to chisel greatness out of metaphorical granite, one wildly subjective opinion at a time. This show, every episode, we select four icons from a single topic and immortalize them in our own personal halls of fame. Subjective? Absolutely. Debatable? Always. Set in stone? Until next week, welcome to the Mount Rushmore Show, where your top four says everything about you. I'm Mike Mintz. He's Joe Mintz. Joe, last week we talked hot takes, and we were definitely taking some big swings. So when we talk about, what your top four says everything about you, you wanted to jump in today. You're already looking at some of those decisions, and I don't know what are your thoughts right now?
Mike, you said it in the first episode. We're gonna keep the receipts on this. And we're not gonna talk about it every week. It's a long season. But one of my hot takes was about your Miami Dolphins making the playoffs. And I'm just gonna address it because it's the elephant in the room. They look bad. They didn't look good, Mike. It was ugly.
Fair.
And they played the Colts, and who everyone thought was going to be piss poor this year with Danny Dimes as their starter. And he looked like Dan Marino out there. It was insane. And I can't credit that to Daniel Dimes and Kevin or Steifen and that coaching staff, or the Dolphins is really bad. But it's 1 week. It's a long season. And I'm going to give you some examples. 2021 Packers, Aaron Rodgers. Week one, they played the New Orleans Saints. Jameis Winston, New Orleans Saints. They lost 38-3.
Ooh.
They went on to grab the number one seed in the NFC, and Aaron Rodgers was MVP that season. 2021 Titans, they lost week one to Arizona Cardinals, a very bad team, 38-13. They took the number one seed in the AFC that year. Steelers, large loss a couple years ago with uh, what's his name, Kenny Pickett. Still made the
Pickett, yep.
playoffs. Mike Tomlin. So there's examples. The biggest ones being the Titans and the Packers. I'm not to say the Dolphins will be the one seed from this, but if they could just edge out 9 or 10 wins and turn it around, and who knows, maybe the Colts are dynamite this year. I don't know what to expect. It's still early.
Well, I think you kind of put a bow on it there when you say we don't know what to expect. Week one, people all of a sudden you're going to see people coming out of the woodwork and saying, "Oh, these guys are great," or "These guys are." Well, we've seen it time and time again. The NFL, the parity, the unpredictability, that whole concept of any given Sunday, right? I think there's some interesting things here because now it comes down to how do you kind of what adjustments are the Dolphins potentially going to make? And this might shine a light on Mike McDaniels, and he's rightfully probably on the hot seat here. And I guess now it's
Oh,
like,
his butt's burning.
and
It's
so
more than
now,
hot.
right? And so now the question is how do you react to that? Are you going to adapt and overcome, or are you going to succumb? And I don't know. We'll see.
But I'm not calling it quits on my take yet. We'll see.
Well, I love that you're still hanging tough, man. I'm used to it, more than 30 years here as a Dolphins fan, and sometimes we've had some rough starts.
I want it for you, Mike, more than anything. Come on.
I would love to have it. Well, Joe, school is back in session. Fall is finally here. We are going to stay on the topic of football today. Spoiler, I guess, a little bit about there, but we're going to transfer from the professional level to the college level.
I love your use of words there, Mike. And if you're watching on video, I'm wearing one of my favorite jerseys, Michael Jordan, North Carolina. We're talking college ball, not basketball, but football. And North Carolina being one of the bigger names being discussed with Bill Belichick at the helm right now, who 2-1. Granted, he just beat Richmond yesterday and got blown out by TCU. But hey, 2-1, man. He's above 500. He's winning games.
Well, I think he's certainly the eyes are on him, and I don't know if it's fair to the rest of the team, but it's kind of like when Deion Sanders becomes the head coach of Colorado, all of a sudden you get a lot more media attention because of who's in charge, and that can be a lot of pressure too for those teams.
And specifically today, I want to have a conversation about what college football has become. It is a polarizing topic now, but the topic itself is going to be the Mount Rushmore of college football transfers. Right now, we're back in full swing, and the games are giving everything we always love about it. The pageantry, there's the rivalry games, there's Saturday chaos every week. The sport itself is almost unrecognizable, I would say, from what it was 10 years ago. The days in the past where amateurism, when the love of the game and loyalty to school colors were supposedly the bedrock of college football, now it's completely redefined. It College football thrived on tradition. You committed to a school, wore its colors, and stuck it out through ups and downs. Sure, there were whispers and allegations and sometimes true of under the table payments to players that always existed. The classic handshake deal or uncle driving a Hummer that you don't know where he got it from. That came from boosters or the big man delivering scholarship enhancements. But officially, the game was about loyalty and legacy. And there was punishment if you were caught. Then came the transfer portal. At first, it was just a trickle, a tool for kids who weren't getting a fair shake, maybe buried on a depth chart behind an All American. Maybe they got injured and lost their spot because of that, because the time you had to sit out 1 year, which was a big deterrence for having them want to transfer, a good barrier to entry. But with the one time transfer rules and the arrival of NIL, and for those who don't know, name, image, and likeness, sorry to mansplain that one there, but just in case,
I
the
like it.
trickle turned into really a flood. Uh, it used to be the whole secret hush hush deal, money changing hands, players finding better situations, is now right out in the open. Players can not only move freely, they can cash in while they do it. There's several examples of guys leaving a school because they won't pay them the money they want to get paid. Sometimes during the middle of a season. This has completely reshaped the sport. Coaching staffs can no longer just recruit a freshman class and expect 3 or 4 years of development. Now every offseason feels like NFL free agency. You're not just building the roster, you're rebuilding one, plugging holes with transfers, and keeping your own stars happy so they don't leave for greener pastures. We've always heard of the deals of the guy go meets with your mom in high school, has the apple pie, convinces them to go to the school, and delivers none of the promises they gave them, right? That is no longer an option, which I believe in many ways is a good thing. We can talk about that. Many people have opinions one way or the other. Um, and the NCAA is scrambling right now to figure out how to regulate NIL and the transfer portal. We're really left with kind of a Wild West era right now where a program can go from irrelevant to contender almost overnight, and players finally are getting compensated for their value. So we're going to break down this topic through notable names in transfers, the players who define this new era, who prove that switching schools could launch you into superstardom. So Mike, any thoughts before we go into our four picks?
Well, I guess just kind of to piggyback a little bit on some of the things you brought up, I think that this is a really good topic for a really good time period, not just because college football is, in full swing and school's back in session and everything, but for all of those things you mentioned, the transfer portal and how that's changed the game. The transfer rules were very different up until recently. The NIL money and, paying players to perform and then also convince them, hey, come to us for more money sort of situation. And I think the only other thing I would add is the college football playoffs has changed that as well. Some schools might have a chance at competing where, 15, 20 years ago, they would have never even been near that to even sniff it. And so now you have a situation where you have a dramatically and fast changing landscape in college football and college athletics to a certain degree. And while it is all very exciting, it is all moving so fast that you're right. The NCAA has no way of corralling it right now. It really is kind of a Wild West situation, which from a outsider spectator position, it's a lot of fun to watch. It's intriguing.
Yeah, we're figuring it out. it used to be a coach was responsible for coaching and recruiting. Now they're dealing with free agency, keep players happy. They're bringing in general managers. I mean, speaking of the Tar Heels, Belichick is the head coach, Michael Lombardi is the GM, Andrew Luck at Stanford. It's another level of professional sports in a way. Whether that's good or bad is one man's opinion, but it's certainly made things interesting, and it's getting redefined every year and every day.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is eventually I think it's going to shake out to something that looks a little bit more steady and steadfast. But right now we don't know what's going to happen, and people might switch teams middle of this year. Then that NIL money could move around. We'll see how that plays out. I think part of it's going to come down to the coaches to some degree. You know, you brought up the way that recruiting was done. I've interviewed many coaches in my lifetime in my previous life as a radio personality, and talking to them about recruiting is always interesting because you're dealing with 17, 18-year-old kids, and how the generations have changed, where it went from phone calls now to text messages, or Discord messages and things. And some of these older coaches that I talked to had a hard time navigating this essentially new world, and that was 10 years ago. So you wonder how some of these old guards are handling this new change for them as well.
Yeah, it's certainly built for a different breed of coach. I think that's why someone like Nick Saban got out when he did. He just adapt or die. Is like I don't want to adapt to this point. I don't see how you can maintain a dynasty in this era, which I think is good for viewers. It's not good if you go to Alabama, but how boring is it to have Alabama win every year for a decade, right? We had that because we were stuck with it. And a lot of that came to boosters arguably underplaying cash that other schools couldn't do. And now it's a free for all with almost like the NFL. You can be a brand new team every year. You bring in a big name coach, you bring in a big name transfer. It's not just a 5-star recruit. It's not just bring them in, develop them, and they leave. Now it's bring them in, retain them, and then bring in additional people to support them. But I don't have a definition on this Mount Rushmore because as I looked at this list of transfers, I realized the list is high, going back to much before NIL of players that have transferred for different reasons. And I say the reasons people transfer today were different than back then. Some notable examples. I'll just throw as honorable mentions like Troy Aikman, who went number one overall pick, UCLA. But he signed with Oklahoma and Barry Switzer. He's an Oklahoma kid. And he transferred not because he couldn't get playing time. He transferred because he got injured. And when you get injured, basically the school has to move on to the next guy. And it's not like the NFL where your job's safe for you by any means. You can't have someone start for an entire year and then say, well, when this guy's healthy, he'll start again. So he transferred to UCLA, and he could afford to sit out a year with his injury. Other players, if they transferred, had a stigma on them, essentially because they transferred because they couldn't cut it with the first school. It kind of gave you this scarlet letter, so to speak, for transferring. Now it's just upgrading to a better situation. There's no judgment around it. It's chasing dollars, chasing playing time, chasing rings, whatever that may be. And we're okay with it. In fact, we promote it depending on where your fandom lies.
Well, I think that's a big thing is like, if you're a fan, especially of some of these mid-major teams, you might be really excited about something like the NIL and the transfer portal. And, you brought up an interesting one with Aikman and the idea of being injured and how transfers used to work. You had to sit out. Now that's no longer the case unless you were like a graduate student. So it has changed. I will say from a criteria standpoint, you're right. First of all, this list is massive. If you go online and you Google how many famous players have ever transferred in college football, it's huge. And some of the who's who is on there. And so, how do you cut down to a four that's personal? And I guess I went with some names that meant something to me, but I also went with I thought some really interesting stories. So that's kind of where I landed, I guess, Joe.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on people that actually had some level of relevance to their first school and then even greater relevance when they transferred. So there's a lot of
Sure.
people that transfer that never touched the field or weren't known of. There's plenty of stories like Joe Flacco was recruited by Ohio State and transferred to Delaware. and Joe Burrow was at um, I believe Ohio State as well before going to LSU.
Mhm.
But both guys were relevant at their first school, and they kind of came out of nowhere with their second one. I want to touch on the guys that were big, flashy names, and when they went to the new school, became even flashier.
Cool. Sounds good to me, man.
You want to kick it off?
All right, I'm gonna go with one. And like I said, man, this is a tough one because I don't even know if we'll share any. Well, we might, but there's lots of
I
names to
think we
pick from.
will. I think at least one.
There's lots of names to pick from, and I'm gonna go with one that might be kind of surprising. And it was when I was doing my research, the name kept peeking out, and I went with it, man. And that's J.J. Watt.
Oh,
J.J. Watt, interesting story. Begins his football journey at a place called Central Michigan. He was on scholarship to be a tight end, and actually he played tight end. His coaches convinced him to switch to offensive tackle. He really hated that. He really wanted to play defensive end, and so he decided he had a starting spot at Central Michigan that was guaranteed to him, and he said, "Nope, I'm leaving." And he didn't even get a scholarship or an offer. He had to walk on at Wisconsin. So he really took a risk to do this. He ended up redshirting his the 2008 season to try and extend some eligibility. He becomes this extremely impactful player. Let's see, he is going to record 36 tackles for loss while at Wisconsin, 11 and a half sacks. He's going to lead the team in tackles. And then in the NFL, he becomes the only player in NFL history to achieve multiple 20 sack seasons. So he goes on to have an incredible NFL career. And I think he's a broadcaster now. I was just watching last week, and he's huge. But it's just like, it's one of those cool little stories to me, Joe, about a guy that essentially had a chance as a tight end, offensive line, leaves that school with a starting spot to go play for somebody he's not even guaranteed a spot on, and then to become so dominant in the NFL as well.
I didn't know about J.J. Watt transferring. It's funny. By the way, great job in the booth in his
Yeah.
first week, if you listen to any of that. So he's top of mind right now, but dominant in college. I mean, just the Watt family in general. But I had no idea. Funny.
Yeah, and one of my when I was doing my research on him, I found out that in order he didn't have a scholarship, so in order to pay to basically exist there in Wisconsin, he had to deliver pizzas for a Pizza Hut while he was an undergraduate there. So
I heard that story.
yeah, so he's got an interesting little one. J.J. Watt is my first pick. So
Yeah, now he'd have them endorsing him to do a commercial or something in
yeah,
college.
that'd be perfect. That'd be perfect. All right, well, so I'm taking a big swing, Joe. What do you got for your first pick?
Mine's a big name. It may even be on your list, and that's Jalen Hurts.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So, a four-star recruit out of Texas. He was known as a dual threat quarterback with toughness and poise coming out of high school. At then goes to Alabama, thrown into the fire as a true freshman in 2016. He went 26 and 2 as a starter, was SEC Offensive Player of the Year, and played in two national championships. But his legacy at Bama will forever be tied to that moment in the 2018 when he was benched for your guy in Miami, Tua Tagovailoa, in the national title game. To watch Tua then win it, Hurts could have stayed and been a backup, but instead he bet on himself, transferred to Oklahoma for senior year. And at Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, he thrived. He threw almost 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, plus 1,300 yards rushing and 20 TDs rushing. Heisman finalist, made the top four college football playoff at the time. And his transfer showed that moving schools wasn't quitting, it was resilience. I mean, the way he handled that, the way it could have went for him, after the championship, getting interviewed, humble the entire way, and then going to the NFL. He's watching Tua get drafted top five. He goes second round. Now, as an NFL MVP candidate and Super Bowl winning quarterback, he embodies perseverance and leadership.
I think Hertz might be this ideal pick for a show like this, Joe, because like you were saying at the beginning, you wanted to take a guy that was good at one program and also good at the other. And Hertz was great at both. And these aren't minor programs, you know. We're talking about Alabama and Oklahoma and a stud at both of them, and then going on to the NFL and doing what he's done, and resilience. Again, Tua Tagovailoa, right? Taking his spot and then watching him get drafted and then Hurts to, overcome that kind of adversity. It's a great pick. It's a great pick. I love it. Actually, and saying that, I also share this pick with you, Joe. So we
I
both have
figured it
we
seems
both
like
have
the
Jalen Hurts.
no-brainer
So.
one. I mean, it's just a great story that's still being written. I mean, a true underdog that's had zero controversy, that's been handled adversity like a champion and been a champion. And frankly, I mean, Tua's got to have a little chip on his shoulder now, watching Jalen exceed his success in the NFL.
Well, I mean, that's my hope is that Tua's watching this going, okay, I got to get back. I got to come back and return here. So.
Yeah.
All right, great. So, well, I guess we shared that one. I already picked one, so I'm already on to number three here,
Yep.
Joe. And I'm gonna go with I mean, relatively, this guy's pretty new, but he's got an interesting story, and this is Michael Penix. So
Yeah.
Penix initially starts out Indiana University, but he kind of like a Troy Aikman. He's injury plagued, and not just one. It's not like Aikman breaks his ankle and he's out for the year and then loses that starting spot. But Penix is going to tear his ACL, and then he's going to do it again. And so he's really in this position where he's just not healthy and he's not doing well. He's looking for a new start. So he moves back. He moves to Washington to be under one of his previous coaches, and it's kind of this remarkable comeback story. Really one of the greats. He becomes an elite performer, 11-2 record. They end up, national recognition. He wins Comeback Player of the Year in 2022, top finalist for the Heisman, as well as the Maxwell Award in 2023. He's throws for almost 5,000 yards in 2023. And he's one of those guys. He goes on to get drafted in the NFL, and we'll see what his career here. That's why this is a little tough because we don't know what his overall is going to be. But I love the story about bouncing back, and this is a quote. I got this from him. He says, "I just make sure I have the right mindset and I attack every day with a purpose." And he says, "So that when things don't go my way, I'm able to bounce back and capitalize and learn from those moments." This is coming from a guy where things really did not go his way, and to be able to say, you gotta understand that sometimes things are gonna go wrong. You gotta bounce back.
Yeah, similar to Hurts in the sense of resilience, but in a different way. Because when I think of his career in college, and one of his stigmas coming in the NFL draft was injuries, ACL tear, shoulder issues, and he was kind of lacked consistency at Indiana too. Um, I mean, it kind of derailed all the momentum he was having there. And plus, at Indiana, you have coaching staff turnover. You don't do well, and they couldn't sustain a competitive roster. And then Washington kind of gave him that fresh start, and he took advantage of it. I mean, he won the Maxwell Award, Davey O'Brien Award. He was runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. He's kind of a perfect transfer story from highly talented out of high school, but injury cursed at Indiana to a full-blown superstar at Washington. And Indiana played out to be okay too. I mean, they made the college football playoff last season. So it worked out for their program as well. And Washington became a college football playoff contender playing in the national title game his final year. He's proof that the portal isn't just about chasing money. It could be about fit, health, coaching, and just best situation to maximize potential.
The real question, and though, Joe, as I think, and you probably go at me on this one, is we don't know what his ultimate career is going to end up being. I mean, he
We're
could he
seeing it
could
play
flop.
out
Yeah.
on Sundays now.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. All right, I have three in the box. What do you got here, Joe?
Um, I'm gonna go with a little bit different one. We're gonna get away from quarterbacks, and we're gonna go with Jahmyr Gibbs,
Oh, great choice.
who was a savior for me last season in fantasy football, by the way. Um, Stud in Detroit right now, but he was a four-star recruit out of Georgia. He was one of the top all-purpose backs in that 2020 class. He went to Georgia Tech over Florida, LSU, and Alabama. The reason being he was looking for immediate playing time, where the other ones he'd have to sit behind another feature back as a freshman. At Tech, he instantly flashed, I would say, elite talent on a bad team. I mean, Georgia Tech is not a powerhouse by any means, the other teams I mentioned. But over those 2 seasons, he put up nearly 2,000 scrimmage yards and showed his versatility as a runner, receiver, and returner. But Tech's offense just really couldn't showcase him on a national stage. So he wanted bigger spotlight and a chance to compete for a championship. So where do you go? Alabama. Known for producing tons of NFL ready backs like Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, you name it. So he was a perfect fit there. And when he was at Bama in 2022, he had 926 rushing yards, 444 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns, plus impact from the turn game. He became Bryce Young's safety valve and was many times the most dynamic player on the field. And then in the NFL, he was drafted 12th overall by Detroit, and he's had a, I would say, top five NFL back, if not top three at this point. And he had 1,200 plus rushing yards as a rookie during their playoff run. He's a prototype of the modern transfer, already already great at a smaller school. We've seen this with other players doing from FBS, like the Shador Sanders and Travis Hunters, but needed a portal to reach his ceiling. His move proved how a transfer can elevate both the player and the program.
He's one of those guys that is, I always think about these guys on some of the teams where it's like they go to him, whatever the situation is. Like their chips are up, they're going to him. If their chips are down, they're going to him. And Jahmyr Gibbs seems like the kind of guy he's reliable, right? You can count on him to do it and to kind of be this, you said safety valve, and that's really what it is. It's a guy that you're like, all right, when we need something, we're going to go to Gibbs. And Gibbs has kind of consistently proven that, not just in the college setting, but we're seeing that in the NFL as well. It's just extremely versatile. And it's an interesting background. I didn't know. I'm actually kind of happy you went with this guy because some of those things I'm like, wow, I didn't realize some of his stats, especially in the college level.
Now, Mike, you're at three, I'm at two. You want me to
I th
back here?
I think the best way to do this is you go back to back, and then I'll finish with my fourth.
Okay. I'm gonna go with another modern era guy, and that is Caleb Williams.
Good choice. Oh yeah.
So he was the number one quarterback in the 2021 high school class, 5 star from actually my neck of the woods, Washington, D.C., with a huge arm and playmaking ability. He went to Oklahoma, which is a quarterback factory. I mean, produced tons of Heisman Trophy winners from Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, who coincidentally also transferred to that school. As a freshman, he replaced Spencer Rattler, who was supposed to be the next big guy. Who, hey, he got drafted. He's starting for the New Orleans Saints right now, but his college career didn't play out in Oklahoma the way people thought it would. And it was a shock to most to see him get benched for a freshman in Caleb Williams mid-season. And although he didn't have a long, big career at Oklahoma, he did have some memorable moments leading Oklahoma to a big comeback win versus Texas. And at that point, I think he was cemented, along with his high school status as a 5 star, as this guy's going to be a star, whether it be at Oklahoma or anywhere. And his transfer story is a bit different because I don't think he would have transferred. I mean, he's now touted as the starting quarterback at Oklahoma that's producing NFL ready, Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks. I think the obvious move was for Spencer Rattler to get out of town because he lost his job, which he did. And credit to him, had a pretty decent career at South Carolina. But his transfer was because of coaching. Lincoln Riley being the head coach and the one many said are the reason for Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts' success. He bolted to USC and Williams followed. So NIL opportunities in LA didn't hurt either guy. Because at USC, he was immediate impact. His first year there, he threw over 4,500 yards, 42 touchdowns, and won the Heisman Trophy. And he brought USC back into the national conversation since the, I would say, Pete Carroll era of USC. And Williams is the poster boy for the portal and NIL. He showed how a single player can completely change a program's relevance, and he did it while becoming one of the most, I would say, marketable athletes in the country, who we're still talking about week to week right now, as we're talking about hot seat, as he's in a tricky situation in Chicago at the moment.
Caleb Williams is a great pick. Both great, great colleges there, Oklahoma, USC. You said the reasoning behind it is, following a coach and opportunities there. He's going to go on, win the Heisman Trophy, so that's a big win for him. Um, I kind of want to touch on where he's at now because what I remember about Caleb Williams in college watching him is how complete he seemed to be. A lot of times you get these college players that are stars and they can do one thing really, really well, but they're not this complete package. But Williams seemed to be able, he was very much like able to throw from different arm positions, almost like an Aaron Rodgers, and his ability to vary his velocity. It looked like, man, this guy is set for stardom. And now we're going, well, he's on this hot seat. But a lot of people forget that many great quarterbacks struggled their first couple of years to kind of find a footing. But players like Peyton Manning did not have fantastic seasons first or second. So I'm not saying Caleb Williams is going to be on that type of level, but he seems to have a lot of the tools for it. And he definitely has the collegiate pedigree for it. So I think given an opportunity, he might be able to do that. I like this pick. This is a great pick, Joe.
And I think with Brian Johnson at the helm now in Chicago, the quarterback whisperer in the NFL for Jared Goff, if this is be the opportunity to find success. And hey, one weekend we like to overreact. It was a close game against Minnesota, really another well put together and coached team. So we'll see how it plays out. But he's got a lot of pressure on to produce, especially as his number two overall pick with my team, Washington, way overperformed him last season. But a lot of it's situation, and unfortunately, in the NFL, you're beholden to a contract. You can rant and rave and demand a trade or to be let go, but it's not your choice. In college, it is your choice. You can leave after one season. And if there was a transfer portal in the NFL, we may see a lot more moves than we do currently.
That would that would be uh, surreal. I don't even know how to put it. But yeah, you're right. That's kind of what makes this show, this particular episode, so good, is these guys get to kind of choose. We've talked about some players. I guess I'll wrap up with my fourth here, but we've had a couple of players. Michael Penix, you brought up Caleb Williams. Guys, we don't know where they're going to end up, shake out in the NFL. I wanted to go backwards just a little bit before the transfer portal, before NIL money. This is an old school transfer, and one of the all-time greats in the NFL at the wide receiver position, and that is Randy Moss. Moss to me is the
Marshall.
yeah, is to me one of the first of all one of the guys everybody knew transferred because he came from a small school, and the reasons why are not because of grades or injuries, but because he was a troubled man. He's luckily going to get his life back on track. He initially signs to play with, of all places, Notre Dame. They deny him because he pled guilty because he was guilty of two counts of misdemeanor battery. He then transfers to Florida State, where he's quickly dismissed following a probation violation for marijuana test. He finally gets to Marshall, which was at the time essentially like a FCS school, or what was an FCS school, wasn't even a bowl school. And he plays at Marshall. Marshall was a much smaller school, especially at that time. He gets the nickname the most dangerous player, instant impact, unbelievable. Leads them 15-0 national championship in 1996. Coming out of a small school, he is heavily thought of in the NFL. He is going to go from college, goes into the NFL, and has some troubles early on, but hooks up with Chris Carter there in Minnesota, kind of turns his life around, goes on to have a great career. And this is one of those stories where he didn't just, I mean, in a way, he transferred schools, but he also transferred lifestyles to a bit, was able to find his footing somewhere new, and had a great, successful career. And to me, the greatest catches, highlights of all time, are Randy Moss catching the ball at its highest point. It's amazing.
Great pick. I got to fact check you. You said they went undefeated and he won a national championship
Let me,
at Marshall.
well, I think this is FCS, not FBS. So,
God,
so
I thought they were. FBS.
I think they are now. I
At the
don't
time, they
remember
weren't.
yeah, but that's what I was saying at the time they weren't even in the bowl subdivision. Let me double check that, Joe, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. So
Yeah, you
to get
said that. I
myself
immediately
so
had to flag that, but it could be true.
let's look
Um,
it up.
but
So
I'll give you my quick and dirty on Randy Moss. I mean,
yeah,
obviously one of the greatest NFL receivers and or college we've ever seen, right? He has been consistent wherever he's went. And I know he committed Notre Dame, like you mentioned. I remember that because Lou Holtz, the legendary Notre Dame coach, called him the best high school player he's ever seen. That's saying a lot. And I know Marshall kind of gave him that lifeline, and it's also right in his home state as well. But I just remember his stats, how crazy they were when you read it at Marshall. I mean, granted, big fish, small pond in many ways, but his first year there, he had 28 touchdowns, and he led Marshall to, you're right, this double A title.
15-0 FCS.
The asterisk is the double A stuff, but still.
They called it Division Double A at the time. 1,700 yards that season. So
But he finished his college career with 54 touchdowns in just 28 games.
yeah, that's insane.
And then it just goes to show his legacy in the transfer portal as second chances. Not just playing time or NIL. Because the talent the whole time was undeniable. He would have been successful anywhere, but he needed a
Mm.
second chance with the program willing to let him showcase that talent. Um, and it ultimately led to one of the greatest NFL careers we've also seen at the position.
It's one of those great stories. I love the Randy Moss story because anybody that plays for a small school might feel like you can't get to there. Randy Moss to me was this guy in this, especially in the late 90s, where you're going, well, it doesn't matter where you're playing. If you're that good, people are going to take notice. It's going to be a difference.
Yeah, and it's a story of redemption, which I like as well. There's actually a great documentary on 30 for 30 that did not make our Mount Rushmore of sports docs, but it's still good, called Rand University, about his career in college specifically.
Perfect. Well, I think what you still got one more, right, Joe?
I got one more. I'm gonna choose another big name, arguably a bigger name in the pros than he was in college, but still relevant. And some of this may surprise you when I share with you some of the stats he had. But that's Russell Wilson.
Oh yeah.
He was not a blue chip guy. He was a two-star recruit from Virginia. NC State took a chance on him, and he quickly proved he could play. When he was at NC State, he was a 3-year starter. He set school records in passing and became one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. But he also had baseball ambitions, and NC State staff wasn't thrilled about the split focus. So, after a summer of playing minor league ball, NC State head coach Tom O'Brien at the time essentially told him that your job wasn't guaranteed. And this is telling a guy that's one of the best players in the ACC. And then essentially Wilson called his bluff and he transferred as a grad student. So he then went to Wisconsin, and in just one season, he lit up the Big Ten. 33 touchdowns, only 4 picks, which is almost more impressive to me.
Man.
3,000 yards, and he led the Badgers to the Rose Bowl. They haven't had a season close to that since. And he proved the graduate transfer rule could change a program overnight. Wisconsin went from solid to elite because of one move. He became a model for veteran quarterbacks looking for a fresh start. And all of mine before NIL. And then goes to the NFL, and similar to his college career as not the blue chip guy, 2-star recruit, he kind of was that coming in the NFL, undersized guy, fourth round pick, expected to be a backup behind highly paid Matt Flynn for the Seattle Seahawks at the time, the newly coached Pete Carroll's team, and wins the job in the preseason, goes on to make the playoffs, and then win the Super Bowl in his second season. Obviously, his career is kind of on the fringe right now in New York, as he's got young Jackson Dart breathing fire down his neck. for any more piss poor games like he had last week. But I still say that Hall of Fame NFL career, Hall of Fame college career.
Russell Wilson is also, this is a great thing about the difference between college and the NFL, or even professional sports, is two-sport athletes are extremely rare in the NFL. I mean, we've only had maybe Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders to really name two that have ever done it, but in college you see it a lot more often. And some of the big names, Tony Gonzalez played basketball for Cal and was a good basketball player, and also, All-American tight end. Charlie Ward played basketball and football, ended up going professional in basketball for the New York Knicks, and it's like
Donovan McNabb at Syracuse played a little ball.
McNabb at Syracuse. And so and then of course you got Russell Wilson who played baseball. And I remember he was even drafted in baseball. He didn't go,
Yeah.
but so you look at these
Kyler Murray
guys,
was a first round pick in
yeah,
baseball.
and
First
so
ever
that's
first round in both.
and so like it's always exciting from a college standpoint. That's what kind of makes college a little more interesting. But he was a great baseball player. And I remember when he came into football, I remember even his first couple of years, you're right, Joe, he was not just undersized, but underappreciated. A lot of people had hardcore opinions. Even when he was successful, there was all the when's the bottom going to drop out for Russell Wilson. And I think he really silenced a lot of those people and kind of made them eat crow to some degree. That's what you love. You love it when a guy can overcome the negative opinions and viewpoints of them and be super successful because that's the excitement for me.
I agree. Well, I had some closing thoughts as we wrap this up. Just on kind of where we are with college football. I mean, I kind of alluded to this in the beginning, but for traditionalists, this new era of college football can feel like a betrayal. Gone are the days where players stayed 4 years, built the legacy, and left only after exhausting every ounce of eligibility. But here's my take. This modern era is good for the sport. The transfer portal and NIL have brought fairness to players, given fans more parity, and injected new storylines every single offseason. Programs can turn around quickly. We're no longer beholden to the same powerhouse dynasties year after year. And players can finally earn money for their contributions without being forced into the NFL early. So, yeah, the sport's changed, sure. It's not the same college football our parents grew up watching. But in my mind, it's more exciting, more equitable, and ultimately just more fun.
I could not agree more. I never liked the idea of not having a playoff in college football, and it went on way too long for that. I never loved the idea of the NIL. I know Ed O'Banion for UCLA was a big pusher for this lawsuit and getting these guys paid for their likenesses. And yeah, they do get scholarships, but not everybody. And listen, most of these guys aren't going to go pro in anything. This might be the only time that they can catch a paycheck. And for me, I'm perfectly fine with that. Plus, look, the boosters were already paying some of these dudes anyway. So I'm not a traditionalist by any stretch of the imagination. I want to see things adapt, evolve, and go over time. Is it a little bit tricky right now? Sure, but we're going to figure it out. And even if we don't, in the meantime, it's still going to be very exciting and intriguing to see how it all turns out.
That's right.
All right. Well, I guess that does it up for us. You heard our picks. These are our top four of what we thought on our Rushmore of college football transfers of all time. Maybe you have a different set. Hopefully you do. Let us know who did it right, who did it wrong, who do you agree with, who should be on the list. For Joe Mintz, I'm Mike Mintz. This is the Mount Rushmore Show.